Thank you so much. So my name's Charlotte Belland, and I am the chair of the Animation and Game Art and Design program at the Columbus College of Art and Design, and I'm a professor of animation. My area of focus is drawing animals. So drawing as many animals as I possibly can. I always post a daily animal to Instagram, and I've been enjoying that habit since about 2013. My favorite thing to draw with is ink. So that's why I really enjoy this partnership with Etchr, because of the fact the joy that this company has with ink and with paper. It is exactly my bag. That's exactly what I like to do. So that's what I want to share with you today is some drawing with some ink, I want to do some gesture drawing. We'll talk about breaking down that complex shape for the gesture. Then we will do some inking through using a light box. And then we'll do drawing directly on the beautiful Etchr paper. So that's the goals for what I'll show today.
Awesome. I'm excited. Would you mind showing us some of your artwork?
Absolutely. So these are, again, like my favorite thing in the world is to draw with ink and no erasers. So that has really helped with, let's see, is that in focus enough?
It is getting there.
There we go, maybe, okay. So I love drawing with ink. I love drawing, especially like with big, nice big black ink brushes, because you can get these really amazing shapes. I also like working with colors, and I draw a lot of tigers. I think tigers are pretty amazing animals because you can use your ink to give them their contour. I also love drawing with toned paper. I think that's always a really nice thing to work with. And then being able to put a little bit of that color and tone on it with some ink wash. And then big surprise, here's another tiger. Imagine that. This is like almost a, it's literally my favorite subject. I think it's mostly just because with the black ink, you can really find those volumes of the animal itself. And then another animal that has a lot of stripes that I really enjoy working with are zebras. And so this, if the camera will focus on that, there we go.
There we go.
So, there we go. So this is a project from a while back. This was all modeled in Maya, and then it was printed in 3D on some of the first color printers that were ever made. So I thought it was hilarious to do a black and white animal on a full color printer. But I really enjoyed working with all the different shapes of this zebra. So that's all printed in 3D. So those are some examples of some of my work.
I love them. And people in the chat are watching from New Zealand, from Nova Scotia. They are from all over the place. And someone just said that they love those stripes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, stripes are fantastic with ink.
Yes. Cool. So should we get started on today's demo?
Absolutely. So there are some reference images that I'll be using. And I'm going to be looking at them with my iPad. But my iPad's a little bit big, so I'm going to try and see if I can place it where I can see it. But so there's 7 images, and I'm going to be working with the very first one. So this handsome fellow, this is Henson. And Henson is a Eurasian eagle owl. And he is one of the most docile, this kind of goofball birds. Like he just a very relaxed bird. You can kind of see it in those pictures. But I'm going to start with this picture first, is the one that I'm going to be using. But I'm going to kind of set it a little bit off to the side because my iPad's a little bit bigger than my drawing space there.
Fair enough. And just so you all know, I will be dropping the link to the reference images in the chat. It can also be found in the description of this video. And the reference images are titled 1 through 7. So right now we're working on number 1.
So for the tool that I'm using is a felt tip pen, Tombow, and I'm using the brush pen end. And when it comes to gesture, the one difficult thing that happens is that you're working with you're trying to capture multiple things at the same time. So there is the anatomy as one of them. The feathers, so like the bulk of the feathers is another. And then the pattern. So like all three of those things have to work together. So when I'm looking at this this image of Henson, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and push the overall, just the overall posture of the bird. But I always like starting almost all of my gestures. I'm going to start with the face. So like I like to get that indication of the eye, and then just a little bit of that head, and then bring down the forehead. And once I get that kind of anchors where I'm going to make my drawing. Now I'm going to add the bulk of the feathers. So it's got that really big, beautiful neck, that big cheek, that big puffy chest. And I'll kind of break this down here in a second once I get this on paper. And the wing.
And you're adding different pressure to it as you move on?
Yeah, so I'm doing as light of a pressure as I can when I first start, just so I can just get an overall shape. And you'll notice that I'm not following the picture exactly, because when my main goal is always drawing from life. So an animal is going to be moving around, and it's not going to sit. The birds do sit still pretty well. These beautiful, magnificent birds. But I draw with as light pressure as I possibly can, because right now I'm just trying to get the overall, bulk of the creature. Just kind of get that, has that one wing that comes down, and then the little feet, just enough so I know where everything's going to go. So that gives me a good landmark of all the different spots. But the catch with these birds is, again, you're dealing with anatomy. So the physicality of the bird, you're dealing with the volume of the feathers. So this bird, if I were to kind of draw that little skeleton, like if I draw a skeleton next to it of the same pose, so you don't have to draw this, but I'm going to draw it as reference. So if you've got, that egg shape for the head and the really big eye orbit, and then the bill. So this would be the skull. Their neck is really skinny. So Henson is kind of got his neck, tightened up as he's sitting in this position, and he's got that breastbone, and then the volume of his rib cage. His legs are huge. So the kind of the proportions, there's the word, that I like to do is you think about the fact that his pelvis is somewhere like up here, like right there. So that means that his legs come out, back, and then forward again. So like that weird creature is underneath that, all that feather and fluff. And then likewise too, there's obviously the wing that comes up and then back down. There's the other wing like that. So it's a lot of like there's anatomy underneath it, but a lot of times when people do gesture, they just go to the anatomy, which is part of it. But the catch is, look at that giant patch of feathers like behind his neck. Like that's vital for his pose. So what I like to do when I'm first teaching people about drawing owls is you kind of think about it as like 1, 2, and then a larger one, like a little snowman. This is the head. This is the chest, and it's kind of like a heart. And then this bottom, that's the legs. So like that's the overall proportion. You have the angry snowman proportions, with the bottom half being a lot, because like the legs are huge, like the legs are really long. So like the legs on, Henson start right there. So I'll be keeping in mind, like, the angry snowman, the little heart on the chest, because the heart, you can kind of see it on that picture. You can see that kind of poof that's happening. And then thinking about pattern. So these owls have, you can see all those spots and whatnot. So I'll think about like, okay, I might, yeah, I know his one little, and those are tufts. Those aren't ears on the owl. Those are just like little feather tufts. So I'll think about, and now I'm going to change my pressure, and I'll think about how do I want that overall look to go. Oh, and one other little fun trick. You can kind of see it right here on this, on the skeleton. When you're trying to figure out where the owl's beak goes, when you draw the eye, so once you kind of get that eye in there, if you just pull a very light line off of the top of the eye and then bend it down as you get towards the front, that'll give you a pretty good position for where the beak goes. And I found that really helpful for 3/4 views, side views. It seems to work quite well. I enjoy using that little trick. And the other kind of detail that happens on an owl's face is that they have a almost like a little butterfly pattern. So that starts at kind of the corner of the eye and then comes out and then back up. So it kind of makes almost like a little bit of a beard. But now I'm going to change my pressure, and I can come in and start to work with things like that dark spot in front of the eye. And I can give it its pupil. Henson is super relaxed, so his eyes will always stay. It's very rare for him to open his eyes super, super wide. But that can give me a little bit of a, just kind of a look. The other eye is obviously hidden. So when it's hidden, I'll just give some little light brush strokes to say, hey, there's a volume here. And then, so now I'm going to start doing the patterning. So I'm going to use my brush to go in and figure out by wrapping the pattern, and I'll move my brush around a little, I'll angle it so that way it's like, this is the direction the feathers are actually going. Like that. And then this guy's little chest, got the wings. The owl will have its flight feathers down here tucked in. And then for the legs, I'll use that same kind of technique of just pulling a little thicker line up until we get to these big shapes, and I'm wrapping it around. So I'm kind of like the same thing with the tiger. Like instead of it being stripes, we're using these marks to get that overall kind of pattern. And I'm not, I probably added a few too many, but that's okay. And then for the feet, I want to give it, you want to think about, there's a lot of pressure being, pushed on the foot. So you think about the flow, like flow down from the ankle, and just give it a nice, end with that big hooked, claw. And same thing for the other side. And then tuck one behind there. So I'm thinking about the bird's foot kind of sitting on almost like a round, you can see it on the picture, but a round pedestal. And then same thing for the other side. Now I'll give a little indication of that volume of the owls have really fuzzy legs. And then a little bit of indication of that tail. So it doesn't have, you don't want to put too much detail in the gesture drawing, like just enough so we can tell, obviously it's an owl. We can tell that, you can make it a little bit more intense if you want. But just enough that we can tell that that's an owl, but keeping in mind that we're combining three things: the anatomy, the volume of the feathers, and the patterning is the goal for that.
Okay.
So that's a little, thank you. That's a little quick gesture. So now what I want to do is, the other thing, I'm using non-precious paper right now, because when you're first doing gesture drawing, if you use really beautiful paper, like you find inside of those lovely Etchr sketchbooks, you might find yourself tightening up a little bit. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to continue to use my non-precious paper and my felt tip pen. I'm going to draw Henson in the next pose, which is I think it is number 2. So okay. Yeah, the number 2. So he's standing very standing very forward. He's facing the camera. So we're going to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw it on this non-precious paper, and I'll draw the other pose as well. So that way I'm not worried about messing up. So if I do happen to mess up, no big deal. You can just, you can get rid of the paper and no worries. And then we'll take that drawing and we'll put it onto an Etchr sketchbook and then use a light table. So, and then I'll show another technique after that.
Okay.
So this one, I'm looking at him, he's straight on. He's looking right at the camera. Well, kind of, he's looking over. Owls can't move their eyes. So that's why they turn their heads so much. But you can see that kind of overall, that gesture I'm going to try and get of him. He's got his little ear tufts up. So this one's going to be a little more loose. He's got that nice round head. He's hooting. So that's why he's got that kind of, his little chin hairs are sticking out. He has this really nice twist happening in his body. So this is the head. Here's the chest. So the chest I like to do almost like a little bit of a heart to get that little poof. And he's got his one leg out, really extended outward. So I'll overemphasize that with his little feet. Like that. So it's really, he's planting that other foot. So more exaggerated than what's in the picture. And then I will bring the other foot around and have it just kind of peek out. So he's balanced.
Now that you've explained kind of how the skeleton of the owl is, I can start seeing where the actual little head would be and the little rib cage, and then how massive the legs really are.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to watch them. There's a video of somebody, I think it's on a great horned owl. They put their hand underneath the owl and they lift up, and like the owl's head doesn't move, but like the hand goes whoop, like way up. It's amazing like how long their legs are. So that's a real fun part about posing, is that you can really bring that out. So this would be about as far as I would take a pose, but now I can come back in and just figure out a little bit more about, where I want to place that eye. So his head is facing down. So they have that little, almost like a hood. I'm going to kind of overemphasize that. I'm going to give the beak to kind of tell us where the front of this bird is. And then I'm going to give him his eyes and make him look directly at the camera. And that's a little intense for Henson. So I'm going to bring that down. There we go. That looks more like him. So that's as far as I would take a gesture for that one. I'm going to do the next one, which is, that's 3. Yep. So number 3.
By the way, Susan in the chat said that it's very interesting, and thank you for explaining the anatomy under the feathers.
Welcome. I'm glad that that's helpful. Owls are fascinating, I guess is the best way to put it, how long their legs are. And I apologize for that very first drawing. I think I was using the third picture. So I apologize on that. I think I was using reference picture 3. I'll just use 1 again for this next one. So this is reference image 1. Okay. Just so I have that. So that was my fault. I was looking at the wrong picture. But
no worries.
So I'm gonna draw this one. He's a little bit more squished down. So I'm gonna think about, you've got that back and the volume of the head. And there's his little face. The face is really tiny. There's the heart. That heart in there. And then those long legs. And then bringing that wing up and around. And then the other wings kind of drop down a little bit. Those long legs. And one thing when I pose the legs is I try not to make them parallel. I mean, they're pretty parallel in the picture, but if you just do a little bit of an angle, it just makes it gives it a little bit more life to that space. Just like that. Get those other feathers down there, and I'm not worried about bumping into this drawing because we're going to use it as an underlay. And then I'll give an indication of the fact that his head is more down and he's looking more up in his classic Henson. And then I'll use that trick. There's the eye. I'll bring a little thin line around to find that where that bill is. And then get the other side of that eye. Just enough.
So I'm guessing that since you typically draw animals from life and you working with these birds kind of regularly, you get to know their personality, and that's why you talk about the way he looks.
Yes, and that's the one, that's my passion. As my students know, I really enjoy the working with ambassador animals that have been habitualized to humans, so that they're not stressed, they're calm. And so this bird belongs to the Ohio School of Falconry. For those of you who choose to join me for my mini workshop, we will have live creatures for that one. So, and we don't know. So again, like with working with ambassador animals, it could be Henson, it could be this particular owl. It'll be multiple different birds, but the catch is it's whoever's not grumpy. So whoever wakes up and is like, yeah, I want to spend time drawing, have myself drawn, being a model. Those will be the animals that will, the birds that we'll use on that day. So I don't know. So Henson though he's pretty rock solid. I think every time I've worked with Ohio School of Falconry, Henson has always been there because his demeanor is so just lovable. If an owl can be lovable, that's definitely Henson. He's a good bird. Nothing seems to faze him. The other bird reference that you see in there is Sedosa, and Sedosa is a Harris's hawk. And she's pretty rock solid too. So those are probably the ones that we probably will see. Okay, in the mini workshop. But for now, what I want to do is, so let's say you've done a bunch of gesture drawings of the owls, and you decide, now I want to start working with ink, and I want to start working with beautiful paper. So I have my wonderful, there's the llama. we know it's quality right there. I've got my beautiful cold press book. This one's a cold press book. So nice smooth paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use just a basic light box. I mean, anything that it would work. I've got a thin profile one. And then I'll use an ink brush. So the ink brush that I'll be using, I've got a Pentel, both of them are Pentels. One's filled with the kind of basic gray ink, and the other one's filled with black ink. So two different types. And I'll show you a technique I like to use for the feathers. Let me take this off.
And is there a reason why or do you use a specific kind of paper when you do inking?
I enjoy, if I'm going to do an illustration, I prefer to use really nice paper. So, I'm going to work this way for one example. But I enjoy the fact that, so the non-precious paper is great, for me not worrying about messing up. But the problem is the copy paper, if you try and use too much ink on it, it's gonna puddle. There's gonna be, it's not gonna hold the ink as well. But if you use really nice paper, the ink is gonna respond a lot nicer it's gonna perform better than if I was just using this copy paper. I mean, you can get beautiful stuff off the copy paper, but this is more fun. So all I'm doing here is I've got my beautiful Etchr sketchbook. I've got my drawing of my owl. I'm going to sandwich that in between my light box. And it's just a low profile light box. A little bit larger. There we go. So we'll use this one.
And if for some reason you don't have a light box, I guess you could kind of work with glass and a light shining from behind.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
So if you have a glass coffee table and put a lamp or flashlight underneath it, you've got yourself a homemade light box.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's, you know, I'm used to using the light box because it's easier for here, but I have used windows. And that's like,
Yes.
you know, to like kind of quickly do it. The only thing I'd say that's bad, a glass table would be so much better, but the only thing I'd say is bad about a window is like if you're drawing and you start to really pull on a line and it starts to puddle, it's like, ew, you know, you're gonna get a pretty little, yeah, drip. It's not gonna look that great. It's gonna be, oh my gosh.
Unless you like the drips.
Yeah, I do too. If I plan them, like if I'm like, oh, I want to have this, you know what I mean? But like, if you're trying to keep it like a clean illustration and then you over ink something and it drips, you're like, no.
Yeah.
But you can always go back with white paint. So
true.
Yeah, if that's the goal. So I've got my gray ink, and what I'm going to do is I am going to first go in with my gray ink and find a lot of the patterning. And then I'm going to come back with my black and really add to it. So one of the techniques I like to use with this pen, and I should show it without, so I'll just show it right here. I'll show it on the side. I like to use the fact that, see how this, like, it goes from such thick to thin like that. So beautiful. But I'll take my black pen, if it'll focus. There we go. Hold down a little bit.
There we go.
There we go. And then I'll take, so this is just the gray pen. You can see how it's drying, and where it's like the dry part, you know, is a little bit lighter. But what I like to do is I'll do that at kind of the start of where the feathers are. And then I'll take one of the edges, like on the side, and I'll take my black and then just pull and from the middle like that. And my black pen, it has a little bit more of a kind of a wispy edge to it. So it builds that kind of light to dark. And that's what I'll use on a lot of the inking for this, for the bird, for the feathers.
What kind of ink are you using?
Whatever came in the pen. It's a Pentel. It's just black. It's basic black is the how the color's labeled, but this is just a medium brush, synthetic brush nib, and it's just I guess it'd be just the Pentel basic black would be my guess. Whatever comes with the pen.
Thank you. Ray was asking, so now you know, Ray.
So what I'll do here is the goal is that this pen is going to capture the kind of darker areas. So I'm going to be a little bit more kind of loose with it. So there's that bill. And this is going to be very, very just loose. I'm going to come in and get some of the details. I'm not going to worry too much about a lot of the details. I'm just trying to get, like, where are all the kind of dark areas of this bird.
And you're using different pressure on it to get the wider, larger marks, right?
Yes. So I'm allowing the brush, and that's what I love about using these synthetic brushes, is that they give you a really wide range. So I'm letting the brush just kind of dictate the thickness. So I'm thinking right now, like this is the area under the chest where Henson's doing that little hooting. And you can see that Henson has a lot of, here's those really big marks that I'm going to use later. And I'm putting a lot of pressure and then lifting up. So a lot of pressure and then lifting up. And I'm letting those feathers wrap around the form. So, and I love it when there's like little dry spots like right there. I think that looks really nice. So I'm not tracing this. I'm trying to add those marks, and I'm trying to think about anatomy wise, the marks are going to be really big on the top, and then they're going to get progressively smaller. So I'll do lighter strokes as I get down to the legs, and I'm going to use the strokes to tell my audience or whoever's looking at this that, hey, these are wrapping around the leg of this bird. So I'm adding more than what's there, but that's okay because I want to give that idea of volume. And there's that other wing. And just giving some indication. I'm pushing pretty hard, but you can see it's not exactly what the, it's not exactly the drawing that's below it. I'm just trying to get the overall look. And then I always like to do this with the nails, the talons, just like that. So that's about as much as I would add, maybe a little bit more on the top, like that. So that's as far as I would take that. And now I'll get my black pen, so my Pentel Black Pen. And so what I'm doing right now is I went over to the side because my pen's the nib had been flattened. So I went over to this spot over here and just kind of touched it so I could get it back to being a point again. So it was really flat. So, and that's what I do want that at some point. But now I'm going to come in and I'm going to do the circle for the eyes. Maybe add a little bit more darkness right there. Do the same thing on the other side.
So what you're doing now is adding a little more detail into those darker areas?
Absolutely, yes. I'm going to tighten up the bill. I have a little bit too hard of a line on it, but that's okay. Easy to fix with some brush strokes. And give them this nice, big, relaxed pupils.
Amazing how once you add the pupils, it automatically looks different at you.
Yeah, that's the hard. Like, I wish I could be like, oh, let's save the pupils for last, but it's like, no, that's always fun to do them first.
Yes.
So once I get most of the face, I'm doing little tiny marks. I'm just trying to go to where I have the ink. Just adding a little bit more. Now I'm going to really press on the brush pen so I can get some interesting marks. I'm going to come in, I'm going to really press down, and the pen will come apart. Hopefully you can see that. It's probably a little hard to see.
Kind of noticeable when you press. Yeah.
There we go. So I love how rough it can become. And then I'll do a nice little rough line across the top. And then here's that technique where I'm going to take, I'm not going to draw the outline. I'm just going to follow what's there to give that almost like a contour edge. And then over here, I make it more of a fluffy line just to get that little floof that's right there. Same thing on these big spots. I'm going to find where I already put the gray down and just bring these up a little bit. Indication of the wing. And I love how dry like the brush gets after a little while, like really pressing on it. Here we go. And then we get down to the legs, same thing as above. I'll put a little blob of ink at the bottom of each one of those little patterns. And then the last thing is to draw the feet. and if a foot's coming towards me, I might give it just a little bit of a curve like that. So I'm telling my viewer that that foot's coming towards us.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other feet. And I always think it's nice to do the owl's talons in a gray. I think that always looks nice.
Just because of how it looks?
Yeah, I think it also takes away the harshness that a lot of times happens with an owl. I think it just adds a little bit, some more dimension to it.
Yeah.
There we go. So that's about as far as I would take that, and I'll turn off the light so it doesn't. There he is.
Oh,
There's
wow.
Benson. So that's a technique.
Amazing.
Thank you. So that's a technique of using obviously a sketch on non-precious paper, and then using a light box to actually transfer it. So, but that, you know, like if you're out drawing, you probably don't have a light box with you. So I want to do one where we're drawing the gesture actually in the Etchr sketchbook and then going back over is the next thing that I want to show you.
Awesome.
So now I'm going to move the stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff.
While you move that, I'll just remind everyone that you will be doing a mini workshop with us where Charlotte will actually be working with live birds. We will have them live on camera so that you can see them move and see how Charlotte works with animals that are moving live, applying the same techniques that we are using today. So make sure you grab your spot if it's something you are interested in doing. I will drop the link to the mini workshop in the chat. And if you've joined this live demo a little later, no worries. You will be able to rewatch it on our YouTube channel once it's done.
Awesome. Okay, there we go. There's my camera. So I'm going to use the reference 4 for the first one. So it's a picture of Sedosa, and Sedosa is a beautiful Harris's hawk. And she's, the nice thing about her is that she's big. She's a really big bird, but she's also, again, just as amiable and friendly as Henson. So that same kind of calm personality, you know, great bird to work with. Obviously some big differences physiology, like with this bird, is that its feathers are obviously much closer to its head. So you can really see that, that shape. You can see the shape of the skull a lot more clearly on this bird than you would with an owl. So I'm using this time. So if I'm going to be doing gesture drawing in a beautiful sketchbook, one of the techniques that works that I like to use is I'll use a light gray Tombow pen. So a light gray felt tipped marker. So this one is N75 is the gray. And the reason why I'm going to do that is that when you're first starting out and you're first doing these ink drawings, it allows you to have some room to make mistakes, right? So you can let the lines go a little farther, no big deal. But I'm using the 4th image is what I'm using. So I'm going to come in, and because I personally like to draw the hawk's head first, I think that that's a neat space to start. I'm going to push the pose a little bit. So I'm going to come in and get that over. They got that almost like the bill comes up, it arcs once, and then the head arcs a second time. Everything flows. You have that really big brow, and then the bird is facing kind of side. So these birds have binocular vision. So you don't want to draw a circle because the bird is facing, it's got its side profile to us. So now I'm going to get the neck, and again I'm thinking about all those feathers, and she's pretty relaxed, so she has her chest forward, and they also have that heart shape you can see on the front, and then those really long legs, but hers you can see are a little bit more exposed. super strong shoulders. This bird does a lot of flying demonstrations and she's so athletic. And then her wonderfully yellow long feet. And I like to overemphasize how long their feet are. Because I mean, their feet are long. I mean, they do have really long toes, but I always tend to over exaggerate them because that's what I like to do. And then again, like instead of, I know in the picture her legs are parallel, but if you think about, like, if you think design wise, like make it a little bit more of a V, so that way it has a little bit more, a little bit more interesting pose. One of those toes are facing us. The other one's coming down. And she has a really long tail, which will go off the page, but that's no big deal. Like that. So this could be a start of a sketch. So this gets my overall look. And I you know, hadn't committed to ink right off the bat, and that's okay. But now I can come in and do all the fun stuff because I got a basic outline. So now I can come in and start to work with this. I'm using my black brush pen, and I get to draw all the detail stuff. So her intense eye. As she looks forward. She has that nice big cast shadow. And if you, so like right there, like I underestimated like the front part of her brow. So all I did is I just brought my brush a little bit more forward and just drew it again. Not a problem. It'll become more of a texture. You've got her cheeks. And you've got her still. So I'm just going over, I used that light pen so I didn't have to feel too worried about using an expensive piece of paper. And the nice thing is now you can just enjoy inking. So I'm letting the brush do what it does, which is, you know, break apart, get a little dry. It's a little too dry, get a little squeeze.
Oh, but that dryness creates kind of like the dry brush marks that also I think are interesting to look at.
Yeah, me too. I love it. I think it's kind of like one of the powers of what ink can do. I mean, like, look how cool that line is. Like, I mean, I love drawing with these felt pens. They could never do that. Like, they could never have that break of a line. Like, that's just, they can't do it. You have to use ink. And so now I'm just adding some details of her little fluffy underside, her undercarriage. Now for hawks, I like to use black for their talons, their claws. It always looks nice. So I'm just filling in where the sketch was. And a little bit of indication of the tail, but that's as far as I would take it. So it's a very, very, very rough. And I can see that it's 8:46, so I don't want to.
I'm pretty sure we can finish her.
Okay, perfect. I was going to do one more drawing with ink. There's like ink, right directly with ink, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine if you have the time.
Sure. Okay. So the other The other technique, obviously, with precious paper is just to go right to the ink. Like, don't, be confident about it. This can be, a lot of times when I'm working with students, this is very uncomfortable, and it's fine that it's uncomfortable. Obviously, very fancy paper, really nice ink. Sometimes we can get a little precious with it. So it's okay. You can do this. So I'm using reference image 6. So number 6. And I like this one because she's making an overall, this wonderfully like round shape. So she's facing us. We're above her. She's looking to the right. So I'm going to just draw directly with ink. So this is actually how I would do it. So in the mini workshop, this is what you'll actually see me doing, which is working directly with ink, directly on paper. So this is how I like to work. So I'm going to start off by getting that overall head position. So I'm thinking about where that head is, and I'm thinking about where is that brow. And she's looking down, so her eyes aren't going to be round. They're going to be more of an oval.
It seems like we lost focus on the...
Oh, sorry. There we go.
There we go. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. And then I'm going to get her beak. Just that broad beak. Because that's a focal point. Because obviously that's the bird's mouth. So she's looking down. So I'm getting that. That's because that'll be the focal point of that. So that's the first part of my camera will stay focused. That'll be the main part of it. And now I'm going to think about, okay, what's that big gesture? So she has her head down, and I'm going to use big concentric circles to kind of find where that body is. So there's that overall shape. And that's going to then tell me that I can come in and make that threshold of where that chin is. And I'm just using directly with ink, and then finding that one wing that's out and wrapping that around, letting my pen get nice and dry. And then she has her right leg closest to us. So I'm going to overemphasize that leg coming right at us. And again, I'm going to make the feet probably a lot larger than they actually are. That's because I think that looks interesting.
It does. I think it makes them look slightly more scary.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the fun part, because like for gesture drawing, remember, you're not trying to replicate exactly what you're seeing. So in like that picture, again, the legs are pretty parallel. I'm going to do very similar to like kind of Henson's pose. I'll bring that one leg back a little bit. So that way I have more of a dynamic looking pose. Like that. And then, one stroke can be one wing, one stroke can be another wing. And then she has her tail out, and the Harris hawk has this beautiful broad tail. This kind of sticks out almost like in a fan. And then I'll go back and do her eye, just enough of her eye so people can see it. That kind of shadow that it casts. So it becomes a focal point. And that's probably, in terms of a gesture, and I might come in, maybe add some indications of the feathers, but that's about as much as I would do in a gesture. Hopefully it'll stay in focus. There we go. Directly onto the paper. So that's my demo.
Wow, that was amazing.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry if I butcher your name in the chat, but Keyfree said that they feel like they're watching this with the same devotion and passion that most diehard sports fans have watching their team.
Oh, that's awesome.
Cheered for those concentric curves.
Yay.
love it. Awesome. This was great. I have a few questions for you if you don't
Please.
mind. Let me find my screen so that I can make sure we can see you too now. Although she looks amazing, I don't want to remove the spotlight from her, but I kind of also want to see you when you answer their questions.
Absolutely.
So we have a few more minutes, and if you are still watching live, if you have any other questions, type them in the chat. This is your chance. But we've had a lot of questions about the brush pens you've been using.
Mm-hmm.
Our description mentioned that they are watercolor brush pens, but you keep talking that you are using ink with the Pentel brushes. So are there any ones that are specific for ink, and is that what you are using?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. The Pentel Black is ink. It actually is ink that's in it. Whereas this one has gray watercolor.
Okay, cool. So I'm guessing if you Google Pentel brush pen, you'll be able to find the variety.
Yeah, and this one pretty much is a water brush that just has a bunch, instead of the reservoir being water, it just has a bunch of gray ink in it.
Oh, okay, cool, awesome. Do you ever add colors to your gesture drawings with Copic markers, watercolor, or gouache? Pancho Verde is asking.
Oh, that's a great question. So if I do add color, I use Koi watercolor felt tip brushes. So the Koi, they're nice and tiny, and like they're easy to travel, so they work well. I ironically do not have any right around with me, but I can tell you that the tiger, that very first tiger that was on the white background, that was this pen and an orange Koi watercolor pen. Yeah.
Cool. I'm assuming that's how you did the tiger that you showed at the beginning with the orange.
Yep.
Awesome. And people are saying thank you so much. This has been quite wonderful. So thank you, Charlotte. I just want to let everybody know that if you are new to Etchr and you haven't actually participated in one of our mini workshops, this could be your chance to participate in a mini workshop for free. So you could use that with Charlotte's mini workshop if you want to. I will be dropping the link in the chat. All you need to do is subscribe to our mailing list, and you will get a discount code access for one of our mini workshop or mini workshop recordings for free. So I'll be dropping that link in the chat, and I will also be dropping the link for Charlotte's upcoming mini workshop with the live birds. And other than that, I had a very interesting comment that I think you need to hear, Charlotte, from Beth Odell. They said, thanks for these tips. We had Cooper's hawks and Merlin nests in our Winnipeg, Canada neighborhood, and great horned owls where we hiked during COVID. Lots of photos, which I will now use as a reference.
Wow, that's fantastic. What a fantastic resource to be able to see that. Oh my gosh.
Right. So if you do, Beth, end up making any gesture drawings with your reference images, please share them on social media, tag us with Etchr Studio. And if anyone else followed along today or watches the video later again to create some owls or our hawk, please feel free to tag us with the hashtag Etchr Studio, tag us. And Charlotte, what's your Instagram account?
My Instagram account is Belland Pixel, BELLAND, and then Pixel, PIXEL.
Awesome. I dropped that in the chat too. So you can, is it okay if people tag you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tag Charlotte too so that she can take a look at what you did and go check out her artwork because it's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I cut you off.
Thank you.
And with that being said, thank you again, Charlotte. Thank you again to our lovely llama family and for everybody who joined today. We will see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.